Welcome back to Hoeffelhohman FC. This is episode 6, as I haven't released episode 5 as of this exact moment in time. But obviously that'll be out before you ever hear this. I'm welcome back with my co-host, Nick Hohman. Welcome.
Hello, I'm here once again. Good to be back.
Good to have you back. We are going to tackle, if we can, chapter 10. So now I'm not even promising a full chapter today, but I have a feeling we can. Yeah,
and long.
It's good and long. I think we can do it, but we will see. It's not, we're going to go with the flow. But again, to remind you, this is Bring the Noise. We are on chapter 10, and as Nick told me while we were hanging out, that this was his favorite chapter thus far, and I agree with that. Obviously, I'm up for one beating it on the back end of the book, but I was sucked into this one when I was reading it.
It was hard to stop reading it.
I felt like I was watching soccer, but I'm just reading a book. I wasn't even at any of these games. I don't know what was happening. I didn't see the craziness of a whole city, passionately on fire and all that.
I think it's also because it's a soccer story that happened before maybe you and I both started on a soccer journey in our own lives.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Just reading about it is just wow, this happened. This was happening in 2001, right. 2006 when I was in first grade.
Yeah, this book or Klopp, there needs to be a movie. Or
probably eventually.
You can just do a movie of Mainz and then a movie
he needs to be
of
on
Dortmund.
Set.
Yeah, and then a movie of Liverpool. But this one more so just because it's the beginning. Just the first journey of Klopp as a coach.
Legitimate coach.
So I think we're just going to dive right on in. This is Klopp coaching Mainz 2001 to 2006. And his first game is a win over Duisburg. In his debut game as coach, earned him a second match. So he wasn't even promised a second game. Everybody wanted to know who we would appoint as the real coach after the game, because I had sold him to the press as the caretaker manager. The caretaker manager, says Christian Heidel. So I said, Jürgen Klopp will stay until the weekend at least. The weekend came and brought a 3-1 win over Chemnitz. Mainz were still in the relegation zone, 15th, but only on goal difference. Klopp was appointed manager until the end of the season. He reluctantly emptied his team locker and moved into the small office of the coach. It was hard for me, he told Reinhard Reichberg. So now he went from one game to the weekend to, all right, ride it out, dude. We'll maybe find somebody later, which is probably still the atmosphere, but he's already having good success.
So when it says it was hard for me that he told Reinhard, is this Klopp or Heidel speaking? Because I wasn't sure.
I thought it was Klopp going it was hard to clean out, because it says he cleaned his locker out. He reluctantly emptied his team locker, so it's
office.
I'm not a player anymore.
Right, okay. That's what I was thinking.
And I know that would have been hard for me, even though it's I want to do this job. I'm here for it, but it's man, I want to suit up. Yeah. I felt that even coaching 15-year-old boys. I'm
yeah.
Can I go on the field?
Yeah, let me play.
I just want to play. Klopp would watch the sessions on top of a little hill next to the council-owned pitch that Mainz used for training. I didn't have the eye then to get a clear overview from the pitch. The team played 11v11, and when I blew my whistle, everybody had to freeze, like in the mannequin challenge, and wait for me to run down and show them where the distances between the lines had become too big. He's literally just on a hill. And I know I like to watch some of our scrimmages from an elevated position, but it's just, he's just doing what he thinks he knows how to do. So it's like, I got to sit up here and you just slowly see like all the things that he starts building like during team sessions, and he's just going to run it his way. He's not like, he has taken in everything he's learned, but he's not looking for anybody else to replicate. Just like, this is how I need to look at it. I need to be from an elevated view, and we're going to build the system that we're going to be a together 11 unit together. So I need to see the space, and we're going to keep ramming it down your throats until we perfected it.
And at this point on a professional level, to, do well and get any kind of points, you need to have this kind of discipline, because you need to practice a system so that you have a system, and Klopp is trying his best to make sure it's being in place.
But they already feared him anyway as a player, and he was already kind of a half coach. Like we read before of him just pushing the managers out of the way to give team talks so the players that subbing in for him. So
yeah,
he's probably not doing a whole lot more differently, other than now he has ultimate power. Schwartz recalls training sessions as maximum intensity, geared towards getting the team into shape for the upcoming final. There was a final every weekend. We thought of nothing else but to perform in the next game. We were completely blinkered. We went on a run that took on a life of its own. It was a logical consequence of the way we treated each other and of our performances. Mines picked up 8 points from the next 4 games to leave the relegation zone. You know how we read in the last chapter that the owners and coaches, they go to church to light candles to just pray for safety, to not be relegated. After a 4-2 win at Hannover 96, they had been 2-0 down at halftime. They were so good. They were as good as safe with 1 month to go. So a season already being rescued, and Klopp being the driving force behind that. Now, they haven't really been relegated out of the Bundesliga 2. I don't know when that last happened. So it doesn't fully paint the picture that of all that is to come. Mm-hmm. It's just Mainz is safe again. Our prayer has been answered. There's no ambitions or anything. It's we are safe. We have done it.
That's a lot of what it's like with a lot of like mid to bottom teams in some leagues, especially like Bundesliga and the Premier League. Like, sometimes the goal is just to stay 10th, just to stay 7th, and just stay in the top league.
I mean, I have it in my notes, so I'm going to bring up Leicester City once more, but you just saying that reminds me of their title-winning season began with Claudio Ranieri just going, let's just get 40 points, because 40 points at that point in the Premier League was, you're almost guaranteed safety if you get 40 points. So they're just trying to not get relegated.
Like they'll be out of the regulation.
Yeah, if you get 40 points, you're probably staying in the Premier League. This is going to be our goal. And then they won the league, so it's like completely not what they set out to do.
I want to find like some sort of like documentary or video or something about their season, and just kind of like see if there's any like tipping point or like climax to where they like are on like 38 or 40 points and they're like, let's just keep going.
Right. Well, they must have gotten it a lot earlier than they expected. So.
Right, which is why I'm like, oh, like we got our original goal down. Like, what else can we do? Yeah, and just keep playing well.
Yeah, I don't remember any tipping points from when I watched it, but I just remember every week it was panelists going, well, if they win next week, then we can talk. And then after that week, it was, well, if they win next week, then we can talk, because it'll be like, well, look at their schedule. They got these big teams. If they just beat, Arsenal and Liverpool in these next couple of games, then maybe I'll think they can win the title. Right. Then they win those games, but because other teams win, so they're not out in front by a mile. They're like, well, if they beat Man City next week, and then they do, and then it was like all the way to the end. They're like, well, I mean, Arsenal still, Arsenal should win the league, because it was like
there was no dramatic.
There's another
about
similarity that we'll get to of like the points total was not stellar, but it got the result, which is I'm foreshadowing for later. But that's how Leicester won. It wasn't an impressive campaign. Like Liverpool lost the title with like 90 or whatever. That would have been a momentous, dominating win the year Leicester won the Premier League. If anybody had 90 points that year, they would have smoked everybody. But nobody did.
Right. That was the season to just grind.
Right.
In the last paragraph that you just read, when they were talking about, we thought nothing else but to perform in the next game. We were completely blinkered. We went on a run that took on a life of its own. It was a logical consequence of the way we treated each other and of our performances. And when I read that for the first time, my only thought was to write down 5 miles up, 5 miles down.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And I was just like, man, like that's the kind of mentality like that. It just matched up so well with like what Klopp is like, with the mentality he's trying to get everybody to sink into. Just like, you know, if we're all in this together, like we have to make sure we treat each other well. Otherwise, it'll just stagger everything.
That's a lot of the mentalities of NFL teams that do well. Most famously, Bill Belichick in interviews is always, we're on to the next game. Don't ask me about 2 weeks from now. Don't ask me about anything that's not football. Who we play next week? We play Cincinnati. I'm on to Cincinnati. You want to talk about that? Or do you want to talk analytics of this last game? Like,
and that's how Klopp was a lot of the time.
Right.
I'm not worried about, like, right after the match ends. He never really wants to talk about, like, the future game.
There was nothing left to play for away to Waldorf, Mannheim, but Klopp and Heidel felt a special celebration with the supporters was in order because they're already safe. The club hired around 60 buses for the away fans, and they chartered the biggest boat allowed on the Rhine. Going to this title of this chapter's Fire on the Rhine, to take them. The team and the entire staff upstream back to Mainz. Flares were still legal then, says Heidel. The whole boat was in flames. An incredible scene. A wall of fire floating down river in the evening twilight. That would have been a sight to behold. So
it's just funny to me, like, just in a very like peaceful, probably side of town, they decide to take a boat back home, which on the Rhine you definitely can, and just to have this whole boat just be this celebratory like color, exciting like flare color going along the river is just like humorous to me, and it's just
just
and it's like, not even like they won the league or anything. It's just like, you guys are just, you know, you're trying to feel good about, you know, the thing you just did. And
I tried to put myself in the place of somebody on the shoreline just watching it go by. It's like, what's happening? And I can picture like an ultra section, but just like on a boat. And just
pretty much
flags and flares and just going like, these people are crazy. But if you know why, then you know why. Now, there's a connection that obviously now Klopp being in charge that he already had with the players, but he's continuing to build that. He could go into a hardcore section of the stadium and tell them, you're all mad. They accept that coming from him. So Klopp is getting even more, as we've read in other chapters that are in the future, of how he connects with the people around him, but this is the first time that he's doing it. That he could go to the ultras and tell them that they're crazy. And they'll be like, well, okay, coming from you, like, maybe sometimes it's a compliment, but like, if another coach does it to the fans, then the fans kind of like, oh, who's this guy? But when it's coming from him, they're like, okay, we get it. We always get it. He always pushed for getting the supporters involved. He's a Menschenfinger?
Menschenfinger.
Literally somebody who captures people and wins them round.
Which he does.
Yes. And it's crazy that it's almost like it's just a natural ability. It's not like he's fine-tuning this knife every single day.
No, it's just his natural personality radiating. It's nuts.
He works with emotions, but also with a plan. We bounced off each other in that respect. The gamble had paid off. Klopp's tenure on the bench was made permanent. He signed a 2-year deal after asking for a bit of advice from fellow manager Ralph Ragnick, who we've continuously been reading about and bringing up on the phone. Klopp was officially declared team chef, team boss, because he lacked the pro license necessary to coach a Bundesliga or Bundesliga 2 team. He eventually gets that, but it's just funny that, I mean, there's some coaches
doing so well that they're okay with him not having it.
And there's some teams now, like I forget his name, but we've talked about the guy in France, and he doesn't have a license, and they get fined like every day.
Talking about the guy that was like he like did so well on like Football Manager.
Yeah, it was like football managing and analytics, and he was involved in some Belgium teams, and then all of a sudden he's just thrust into Ligue 1. And he doesn't, it's not like it's full success, but it's not failure. He's like a mid-table manager, but you're a mid-table manager on a top flight, like, okay, sign me up. Like, yeah. I'll take that.
I know what I'm doing.
He possibly has been moved on. But he was coaching Reims. I think his name was like Will Still. Yeah,
it was. Will Still.
So his tenure at Reims is looks like it has come to an end.
Like who like how did he even just get into that position? Just like he was being scouted, or like he applied for the position, you know? It's
I don't know.
You wonder how like he even gets his foot in the door if he's not.
So he was assistant coach in 2022, and then took over. Not too long after that. I don't know what happened with whoever the coach was, but then he coached them for 2 years. But he is still in the top flight. He's now coaching Lens. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but he is still coaching in the French league in the top flight. A team who finished above Reims by 4 points at place 7th. So Reims placed 9th. Lens is 7th.
Good for him, man. Wow.
So, 9th place is above
just
half.
Like we were talking
come
about.
on, 9th place, that's a good. They were 13, 8, and 13. I mean, if you're judging it based on the cream of the crop, yeah, not good. But this is professional coaching, and as we'll get in, this shit's hard, dude. To do that, it's difficult. Even for the best of the best, like Klopp, it doesn't just come easy at times. But even though it was difficult, Klopp now has a job. Just like Will Still, he has some success, and now he's found his next job. So Klopp is now the team boss, and it's time to get back to work. Klopp feeling now, he says, I am more confident in my abilities as a coach than I had as a player. Years later, he admitted that perhaps that wasn't 100% accurate at the time. I had 1,000 questions, but no one to give any help. I couldn't even ask the questions at first because I had to pretend I knew everything already. Klopp was aware he needed a confidant. Only one man was in the running, Željko Buvac, and I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. His former Mainz teammate. He was my first choice, and he would have been my second and third choice as well. Klopp said of the tight-lipped Serbian, who is 6 years older, he is football knowledge incarnate. And
this man travels with Klopp from club to club, all the way to Liverpool.
Until I don't ever know what came out of that. There was different rumors of why he didn't finish it out with Klopp. He left before, so I don't.
I think the first few years he was there, and then they had like some sort of falling out, which I forget if the book even mentions, but I remember it happening because like Kyle would always tell me about how much he admired the Klopp and Buvac partnership coaching Liverpool.
Yeah, and it does get into it a little bit, not in the terms of them falling out, but going into their partnership, though. Klopp is the salesman and Buvac is the guy for detail in the background. Not that Klopp isn't a stooge, because this book, we learn that he has a mind. He has a very tactical mind, but Buvac more so. Klopp has many other characteristics, which we'll come into later, to why you want him as a manager. It's not even just the tactics. There's so much more that he brings to the club. He's more than just a manager if there was a titled position. Klopp is the salesman. Buvac is the guy for the detail in the background. He never talks. In all those years in Mainz, he never said a word to anyone outside the club. Not a word. There was... I remember once standing near the changing room with goalkeeper Peter Ditzel, the Hungarian international. He played alongside Buvac at RW Erfurt. We knocked. Buvac opened the window near the showers and said, "Ah, it's you." Then he closed the window again. I was shocked. He actually talked. That was the only thing I ever heard from him, which is crazy. Everybody thought that they were always in each other's arms, Buvac and Klopp. But no, they had big arguments, reveals Heidel about the duo's dynamics. It was always about football, though. Buvac is very emotional. Just because somebody's quiet doesn't mean there's not a raging storm in there. Kiss my ass. Shit. He'd leave the room and slam the door, and 5 minutes later, they'd be in each other's arms again. So, that definitely speaks that he's a very opinionated, he knows what he's talking about, and you probably have two alpha guys that just probably get into heated arguments, and when you have a good professional relationship, that doesn't ruin it, because two guys are probably being very truthful.
Yeah.
And it probably has led to a lot of the success, because
they were able to.
You're not just a yes guy. You don't want a yes guy. You want somebody going like, no, if we do what you're saying right now, we're going to lose. And here's why, and blah, 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 blah. Instead of just going, oh, yeah, boss, that's good. It's like, no, like, this is how the best ideas get made, because you put it in the oven, it gets hot and gets difficult, but then it comes out and all the impurities get taken out. Most practice sessions bear no relation to the constant movement and shifts in pace during matches. Buvac's idea was to stimulate precisely that. He had the Mainz players running through obstacle courses, getting their pulse racing before shooting on goal, but there was more. Walls and poles were put up to make the ball ricochet unpredictably once the goalkeeper had made a save, a chance to react and score again. Buvac ensured they never knew what would happen next. Now, I see videos from training sessions nowadays, and that kind of seems pretty standard now.
Yeah, for sure.
But obviously we've been reading in the past that, like, you know, Wolfgang Frank was bringing the back four around. So it's like, not everything, the training sessions must have been different. This is still the age where you can be at the pub before the game, so it's a different time. But bringing those things into a club that desperately needs it is going to definitely bear fruit later here.
Yeah, definitely set a standard for how like training sessions could look later on.
So that's the dynamic of Buvac. That was just a brief section kind of just describing their relationship, and that's what's going on behind the scenes. So it'll say Klopp, but there's more than that behind the mind of Klopp and behind the decision making. So the team is getting down to its tactics. The team instantly responded to a more refined setup. As Mainz transformed their 4-4-2 into a more fluid 4-3-3 going forward, a few weeks into the new season, the inexpensive squad of players that nobody else wanted. It's another thing, that's the Leicester City story. Just nobody wanted these people. Klopp were leading the Bundesliga 2 table. playing a football that was qualitatively and tactically superior than the majority in the division. So this is literally his second season in charge. From, hey, we survived to we're at the top. What's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, that has to like give them some sort of like a bit more faith in like what they're working on and just what the Klopp is trying to do and set with the whole club and the team. I mean, as a player, like getting confidence in the entirety of it is like something really special, and just you can actually believe in what's happening around you and you trust the people that you're working with. And that's got to feel good.
So now we're going to get in towards the end of the season here. There's a little build up here, but it doesn't, we've already read some other sad things that happen. There's very good joy, and then there's a lot of heartbreak. Mainz had spent a grand sum of nil on new transfers. 6 leavers had brought in the same amount of money in revenue. Nothing. The player budget for the year was 14 million DM, or 7 million euros. And the stadium was still crumbling heap of steel and wood, 2/3 empty. After barely surviving the drop in May, supporters greeted the series of wins with self-mocking humor. We're only a carnival club, they were singing in the stands. Klopp's mysterious accomplishments and vague physical resemblance to a certain apprentice wizard had tabloid Bild nickname him the Harry Potter of the second division. People want explanations for why we're up here. He shrugged. From the second match day onwards, Mainz were in the promotion places. A glorious 4-1 home win away against rivals Arminia Bielefeld in front of 14,700 fans in mid-April of 2002 opened the door to the Bundesliga. It's not even on the radar. It's just happening. There wasn't like a set goal that they had in a meeting going like, we're going up this year. Mainz needed just 3 points from the remaining 3 games to cap the most extraordinary season in the history of the club. They drew 1-1 against Duisburg. They drew 1-1 at home to bogey team Greuther Fürth. Only a defeat at FC Union Berlin in the final day, coupled with wins from both Bochum and Bielefeld, could see them slip into 4th spot. So now, if they lose and other things happen...
They tied twice, the pressure is on immensely.
We will go to Berlin, do our job, and return as a first division team, Heidel prophesied. You would think in that scenario that it's just... it's going to happen.
Is it a fairy tale?
But many things rise and stack against them here. I title this little stanzas as a hatred for Mainz. Mainz traveled to the Alten Forstieri Stadium and straight into an ambush. Many neutrals had taken a liking to the high-flying minnows and their entertaining football, but in the eastern suburb of the German capital, the air was heavy with politically charged rancor. It was a very aggressive atmosphere, brutal, says Heidel. Even though they had nothing to play for at all, there was raw hatred. They attacked the team bus. They spat at us. They called us arrogant West Germans. Inside the stadium, it felt as if the home team were contesting the World Cup final. Mainz weren't ready for this pressure cooker. It's definitely not anything they've prepared for when all you've ever prepared for is we just want to survive. And now all of a sudden we're in the spotlight and the people who've been around are going to throw all the old tricks in the book. So it's like we're going to make this the most unwelcoming atmosphere ever.
That has a mental effect.
Right.
Like whether players have recognized it or admitted to it or not, it's just, I know from just like watching some away games, like, buses are bombed sometimes because fans would just get crazy enough to be like, we got to do whatever it takes for to set them off.
Right.
So it's just like that they're hooligans, man.
Yep. So you got the fans all hating them, and you even have the hometown press using propaganda to just spell more hatred.
Yeah.
The atmosphere had been poisoned by some creative writing from the tabloid reporter in Berlin's Courier, an idiot Strutz Bristols. Some very innocuous liners from Klopp from December about Union's penchant for full-blooded football were heavily spun, making it sound as if Klopp was denigrating the well-supported side from the former GDR as a gang of thugs. In addition, Klopp was portrayed as a smartarse, a self-proclaimed football innovator a la Ragnick, and as the loudmouth darling of DSF, the Bundesliga 2 broadcasters. So just making it sound like he's just a smart ass, he knows better than everybody, and making him sound like he's the egotistical maniac that you could probably think at a first glance if you're just in passing of Klopp because of how confident he is. But clearly that's not who he is. Definitely is not. His success is because he puts the ego to the side. But hey man, there's a game to win here, and the press is doing what they do best.
Yeah.
On to the game. Union played with a knife between their teeth and took the lead in the 58th minute. Swiss striker Blas Nukufu, no idea if I'm saying these names right, came on, his leg heavily strapped, and scored the equalizer 20 minutes before the end. And that's all they needed. They needed a tie. We thought we had made it, says Heidel. But then we conceded in the 82nd minute. Threw everybody forward and conceded a third. The team below us had won. We were fourth. The whole stadium sang sardonic songs about Klopp's failure. It was his worst defeat ever. He'd always been the sunny boy, the guy who everybody wanted to interview because of his silly jokes, the guy who made everybody laugh. He'd never tasted such disappointment before. That's brutal, man. 3 games to go. You need 3 points to go to Bundesliga, and it doesn't happen. And I think it even says it, but for teams like that, sometimes like it could be once in a lifetime opportunity. Like Leicester doesn't win that title, they haven't done anything since then in terms of that magnitude. Mm-hmm. They've had success. They're coming back to the Premier League. They got relegated again, but they've had successful campaigns of being close to the top. But in terms of like, this is our one chance to do this, it might not happen again because of how lowly in the last, we've been talking about how lowly this club is operated. Like, it's just like people work for free out of offices and car dealerships, and it's just a whole mess. The stadium's falling apart.
Yeah, it's just, that kind of like, that loss almost brings things back to reality just because, like, if they would have made it, it almost feels too fairy tale-ish and almost too good to be true. I don't know. It's just, I think also it just has a lot to do, like, maybe, like, not making it the first time had taught Klopp a lot about how to deal with just kind of like this kind of winning, this grind to get the winning result, and like having only one thing you're supposed to do and being able to do it. And like, he probably never wanted to feel that disappointment again because he then did it when he was at Dortmund. And then at Liverpool, like, he did it 2 more times when they had to play Dortmund and they beat them from being down. And then in the Champions League semifinal against Barcelona, it's just like, the man seems to know how to get his players to understand, like, you guys have one thing, like, there's only one way it's going to come out. I mean, like, when you have to get a certain amount of points from, 3 games or 1 match to make it through to get what you want, Somehow he just knows how to be transparent enough to get something, you know. It's
for sure.
It's just interesting to think about how the progression of him going through all of these things to not feel this disappointment again is interesting to me.
And he was for sure disappointed. Klopp cried bitter tears in the dressing room. Our life's dream has been destroyed, he said, ashen-faced. Heidel, too, was distraught, certain that Mainz would never get a chance to play in the top flight again. A few good players were sure to go. I was afraid the whole team might fall apart. I thought that's it. I felt like the end of the world for us. Little did we know that next year would be much, much worse. And I kind of felt like that, Klopp leaving Liverpool. I'm like, everybody's going to leave. This is going to fall apart. I mean, I'm hoping to be wrong.
Right. But at this point, it's just like they didn't make it. So, you know, we know that Klopp goes on to get Mainz out of it and then go to Dortmund and then go to Liverpool. But at this moment in his life as a coach at Mainz, that could have, for all he knows, that could have been the end for him.
The story could easily have ended here.
Yeah.
But of all the seeds that he's sowing, the fruits are what come through in the end. And the way that he lives his life and the way that he just doesn't stop. So they get back after this soul-crushing defeat. Schwartz remembers arriving at the Mainz train station and being surprised that there were a couple of hundred fans there, greeting the team with flags and banners. You used to be able to walk through the city with nobody caring. It was only then that we realized that the supporters were really behind us. The day after, that deep sadness was gone, replaced by a real fighting spirit, with Klopp leading from the front. And that relationship that he's building with the people of the city who support them. It's those moments where fans can come out and support you when you've soul crushed. Where it's just like, that's why I don't think you respond that fast of having a fighting spirit if you just show up at the train station and nobody's there.
Yeah, I mean, that would have boosted my spirits if I saw that, man, because I'm very self-critical, and like when everybody else is feeling the same, like it's just like, how are we going to come out of this?
Yeah.
And then one little piece of hope, seeing those fans at that train station, is all it can take.
I love a fan base that recognizes like a team that fights. Like even when they lose and you get the standing ovation of the loss, it doesn't like fix it because you've won a win, but like knowing that the people that you feel that you've let down are with you. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I have a small tradition of even like when my teams that I support lose, of wearing the jersey or the kit the next day.
Oh, that's cool.
Even if, you know, things didn't go quite right.
Right.
Just because, like, I don't know, that's like, especially from reading this for the first time, maybe that's where I got the idea from, but just like, it's important just because like everybody will always, like when they see the jersey, they'll be like, oh, I'm surprised you're wearing that. They had a rough loss last night. And I'm just like, well, I support the team, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And the people at the top see what Klopp's doing. He is extended by 2 more years in October of 2002. So even though they had some heartbreak, it's like, well, if we weren't having success, there'd be nothing to break our hearts. So just like when we read about him at Liverpool, he wins a crazy quarterfinal against Dortmund. And they initially increase his contract right there. We see what you're doing. We see what you're doing. Yeah, we didn't win the title, the silverware, but we see what you're doing. We want you to stay around. So even in his losses, you're not seeing everything that he's doing behind the scenes, and that's why they're like, no, he's got to stay. Like, you guys might crap on him now because you just seen him show up and we didn't get the result that you want, but we see what's going on behind the scenes, and he's very valuable, and we want him. 3 games before the end of the season, A dramatic 3-2 win in the derby against big neighbors Eintracht Frankfurt lifted FSV to third spot. Nothing in me cries yippee, or that's almost it, Klopp warned. The remaining fixtures were kind. There's relegation threatened Aalen away, Minnows, Lübeck at home, relegation threatened Braunschweig away. We want this electrifying football all the time now, Struth says. So the book goes really quickly through this second season and getting you pretty much set up for a carbon copy of what happens last season. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're in the place to win it, but they're right there to be promoted again. They're going to get promoted. This is what it looks like.
Yeah, eventually Mainz are fourth and in tears for a second year running.
Mm-hmm. Sparks certainly did fly at the tiny Wehrstadion. The Wehrstadion?
Yeah, Wehrstadion.
In Aalen. Mainz fell down to 2-0 before going up 3-2 with 90 minutes gone, but still managed to lose. 2 goals from the home side in injury time saw them drop down to 5th place. Klopp and keeper Dimo Wach nearly came to blows after the final whistle, but just as they thought they were down and out, they were back in. A 5-1 win over Lübeck paved the way for another final. This time at Braunschweig, Mainz had to outscore third place Eintracht Frankfurt at home to Reutlingen by 1 goal to quench their Bundesliga desire. At last, Klopp took his men to a mini training camp to clear their heads, aware that further failure might turn the erstwhile popular underdog into a bit of a laughingstock. Some had taken to calling them a Bayern Leverkusen of Bundesliga 2, a reference to the perennial runners-up from the first division. That name doesn't stick anymore. Because now Bayern Leverkusen are invincible.
Yeah, they're renowned now.
Right, which is an amazing thing to have witnessed.
Right. Yeah, and reading this part and that specifically was just like, that's such an old term now.
Right. I want to be called the Bayern Leverkusen of Bundesliga 2. That means we went unbeaten, right?
Right, yeah.
So here's the day. The dreaded day. Klopp's trying to relieve pressure off his guys because we were just here last season.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always, sadly, it's going to be Atletico Madrid. On the day, there are no signs of any jitters. And this is different than Atletico Madrid because they lost both those games. This is different. Mainz were 2-0 ahead within 20 minutes and leading 4-0 before Braunschweig scored a consolation goal in the 18th minute. 80th.
Yeah.
Game over in Lower Saxony. As things stand, Mainz are up. You took care of business. Frankfurt were only leading 4-3 against Reutlingen. Klopp moves his hands up and down as if to suppress the flames of joy because the match in Frankfurt is still ongoing. The home side just scored a 5th goal to make it 5-3. The coach and his players lock arms and form a circle around Axel Schuster, the team manager, who's on the phone to a journalist in Frankfurt. There are less than 3 minutes of injury time left to play at the Waldstadion. 2.5 minutes of anxiety and prayers later, the inconceivable happens. Eintracht score to make it 6-3 at the final whistle. Mainz are 4th and in tears for a second year running. We thought, is this candid camera? Says Sandro Schwartz. We had enough chances to win 5-0, 6-0. I get goosebumps thinking about it. We were all looking at Axel Schuster's face. Everybody was completely gone after that. Not really in this world for a few minutes. It simply beggared belief. That is back-to-back seasons of just heartbreak. And even though you've done better than you've ever done before, it's hard to find the positives in those moments.
Yeah, I would say if that happened the second time in current times, I mean, I don't think it would. I think they would have gotten rid of Klopp at some point.
Sure.
But just to be able, like, for this club to stick with Klopp even after this again is pretty incredible. And probably what makes it for me in this chapter is just like they just continue having faith in what this guy's doing.
Right.
Like they don't have the same expectations as maybe a top flight team would, so they kind of have like more wiggle room to like kind of keep taking chances with either having the same person or staying in the same league again.
Sure.
And just the fact that they're able to just get through it just really makes me like just like giggly, just like this. It's awesome. Like they just kept like things change, like they get a few different players, and you know, things change like here and there throughout the third time, and you just don't hear about like stuff like that anymore. Maybe because there's a lot more focus on like top league play and not so much on like anything below like second division, second leagues. Because maybe there's stories like this happening. It's just like,
it's very possible.
Don't really know, but just with it happening with Klopp, it's just like, man, it's just like it's no wonder this guy has so much belief and stuff, because like this happening, he carries into Dortmund, he carries into Liverpool with, and it's just like it makes so much sense when you watch him coach.
Right. They were dubbed the champions of pain, which I now feel is just part of the Klopp process. Because when he comes around to turn your team around, well, you're going to start competing. And if you're going to start competing, there's going to be chance of losses. But you have to stick through the whole process. Klopp cried when his son, Mark, 13, asked him whether there'd be school the next day. But on the whole, he kept his composure remarkably well. I believe that everything in life happens for a good reason. One day we'll find out why today happened. And boy, do those words just hit a whole different kind of weight, knowing in hindsight his whole career.
Yeah.
The next day, now remember what happened after last season. They go to the train station, or they get home at the train station. There's about 300. The next day, 8,000 people turn up at the Gutenbergplatz, Central Square in Mainz, named after Johannes Gutenberg, the inventor of the printing press, to welcome the team back in the spirit of defiance. And I put a little note, because the printing press just reminds me of Neil Postman's book. That's where it all began. But that's a complete side tangent, not having to do with football. But from 300 to 8,000 is an incredible turn. So not only are more people in the city getting behind them, but they're recognizing what this team is doing, what Klopp is doing, and even in the spirit of defeat, they want them to know that they're thankful for what they've done.
Yeah. This makes me think of when Liverpool eventually won the title during COVID.
Yeah.
And how the fans still celebrated almost in like defiance of like not really, you know, supposed to be out in masses, and just I don't know, it was cool.
It's like I'll be damned if I don't
you gotta
go out for these guys.
Yeah, you gotta celebrate for them, like, and like just you know, these 8,000 people from Mainz, like they're not risking too much, because you know it's not the same time, but it's just, it makes me think of like you gotta, as a fan in that city, like you gotta show some sort of like support for these players, because you have to see, especially at Mainz, because they're going through so much change pretty quickly with the past few years with Klopp.
Right. Nobody cared about this club.
Yeah. And
Wolfgang Frank's complain about empty stadiums and like just all these things that need to happen, but he's just more like blaming than like, well, what are you going to do to get these things as well?
Yeah.
I love Klopp's mentality here on the next page. We were a point short in 2002. We were a goal short in 2003. So you know what happens next, don't you? That's the perfect way to look at it, because that just sounds heartbreaking. But it's like our only next logical step is success, right? Mm-hmm. It has to be. Klopp's third full season in charge, however, was his worst, points-wise. Here comes some of the foreshadowing of Leicester's not very good campaign in terms of points if you're looking at somebody who wins. Between mid-December and mid-April, FSV won only 2 league games. They were 8th, 6 points adrift of third place with 5 games to go. The season was over for us. So now, 2 times before, you would make the prophecy or the guess of like, oh, we're going up. Now it's the season is over. We're 3-0 down to Barcelona. There was talk about changing the team. After 3 failures, you couldn't see the same faces in the dressing room anymore. Quite a few players were told they could leave. I guess the idea was to try once more with a new squad. Mainz had to cut costs urgently. The club had lost money over the last 2 campaigns and needed to generate funds to plug higher than anticipated costs for the stadium rebuild. So, not looking good. It's not good times. Now you can kind of like the failures sticking in our brains, like, well, what happens if it's a third time and it'll all end? And we were only a goal away, and now we're multiple games. Like, it's not happening. Luckily for Mainz, Duisburg provided less than a feeble opposition. In the next game, going down 4-1 at the Bruchweg in Lübeck, Mainz won 4-1 again, then 2-0 at home against Unterhaching. But away to Bavarian minnows, Regensburg, Klopp's team failed to get on the score sheet. The 0-0 draw left Mainz in 4th place. They can only go up if they beat Eintracht Trier at home, and Alemannia Aachen, 3rd, didn't win at Karlsruher SC on the final day. So they're relying on themselves and on other results. Now, I need you to help me out with this one. Klopp put a banner on the changing room. What does that say? Is that ha? Or
no, this is ja.
Ja. Okay.
Just yes in German. Just
okay,
elongated.
with the J. That's the ja. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wasn't sure what that was. I knew it was more just like making a noise, but I was like not used to being spelled with the J. Mainz did win in front of a sellout crowd, 2-0. But once again, they were reliant on a result going their way elsewhere. The game in Karlsruhe, man, this is putting me to the test, was still going on after the final whistle at the Bruchweg. Aachen were 1-0 down. A couple of tense minutes later, Mainz had finally done it. Their tally of 54 points marked them out as the worst team to win promotion to the Bundesliga. It did not matter. The whole city exploded, Heidel says. It's an emotional town because of Carnival. They love to party and are very proud. We went down on the Sunday, however, no one had ever experienced. Mainz, a town without any significant footballing background, had fallen in love with the game and their team 99 years after FSV's inception. So, they were the worst team to ever get promoted. So, that's why I was talking about Leicester City. I don't know if they're the worst points-wise to ever win the Premier League, but It's
I don't know that stat either.
It's probably close. It was a very low point season, and then you're having your worst year, but you get the success,
which seems almost too lucky. Just like with not even having the same amount of points as the last two times, and still getting through based off of other teams' results. It's just like
sometimes
wild.
you need a little bit of luck, and those are the little things that go all together. Sometimes everything's going well, and all your good players get injured, or just there's all these like little minuscule things that really turn the tides when it comes to sports, especially. Klopp, who took the mic, drenched in champagne and tears, he screamed out only one word: "Yeah." Which is why I needed to know what that said, because I wanted to. That's all he said. I don't know if that was ever shared with the fans that was in the changing room or not, but it's just such a Klopp thing to do. This is all I can express, because this is what we went in.
Say, and he only has one word.
We went into the day with this being the only word. 30,000 turned up on a Monday. This is the second party, because the first one wasn't enough. And it makes sense. The city was packed. The face of it all, you have to say, was Kloppo, without a doubt. But he never to this day was vain enough to take much credit for himself. So it's just literally party city, and they're having a second party. And I'd love to read everything, but I just can't. Okay, yeah, and it goes in and just talks about all these different players, and in my notes I bring up Leicester again. It just brings me Leicester City vibes, because it's just has-beens making miracles and just people's different stories. If anything stuck out to you in any of these next few pages, you can bring it up. But for sake of just so much, like I'm just trying to
read this book.
I know. I'm trying to control myself, because sometimes I'm just reading it and underlining stuff. I'm like, I'm underlining the whole book. I can't read the whole book.
I'm underlining the longest chapter.
Yeah, I just circled chapter 10. We're going to read it all.
Now, just to have a little bit of transition, on page 163, the Bundesliga can look forward to having us, Klopp pronounced. We are up for it. In June 2004, German football was down and out, disorientated and demoralized. The national team of Rudi Völler had just crashed out of the European Championship at the group stage without a win for the second time running, having embarrassed themselves with painfully slow, negative performances that were dubbed sleeper train football.
That's how us Americans feel all the time.
Rumpelfußball, from rumpeln to stutter and stumble, by aghast pundits and papers. So it's a weird time for Germany and its football. It does have its ups and downs, honestly, because the past 5 years with the German national team hadn't been super great either. Germany has always been a doer nation, but we had stopped playing doer football, if you recall, a decade later.
I guess it's kind of foreshadowing that the Bundesliga is ripe for a team like how Mainz is playing to maybe not get obliterated.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, yeah, it does. Only like it wakes up over a year or so of the Bundesliga just having, they're having these coaches influenced by Ralph and Wolfgang Frank. You have Ralph Ragnick, Jürgen Klopp, and Sommer, who was eventually a part of the Dortmund ownership. He did some coaching as well, but a lot of these coaches are just they're not intentionally doing it, but it's almost like subtly revamping like what football can be or be again.
Yeah.
There's a surge in the Bundesliga, wrote Frankfurter Allgemeine. Risky football, defending from the front, pressing, and a general sense of acceleration. These are the characteristics of a movement epitomized by these poor underdogs. They play concept football, not hero football.
Mm-hmm.
That I couldn't help but underlining that just because...
I had that underlined too.
I also feel like there's a parallel to how the U.S. plays right now with how we kind of idolize like heroes and how they can have such a big influence. But,
yeah, I mean, we nickname Pulisic Captain America because it's like, just carry us. I'm like, we're not a team that can be carried though. Like, come on.
It's also a sport that can't. Like, it's great to have those players on your team, but it's also not going to lead you into, like, solely lead. Like, you can have an influence, but, like, even Ronaldo has only so much influence on the team that he's at.
Right.
He can only do what he can do. He can't, I mean, he'll score some goals, but even if, like, sometimes that's not enough. But there has to be more of like a concept behind what everybody else does along with maybe these football heroes that are on this said team.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like it says a little bit later on in that sentence, it's shaking up the status quo of what football was at the time.
Yeah. We have Ralph Ragnick just under where you were at, like outlawing the back pass in training.
Mm-hmm. And stipulated a maximum of 2 contacts on the ball. One of my favorite things to do.
But that's how like commonplace that is now. Pep's take the ball, pass the ball, take the ball, pass the ball, take the ball, pass the ball.
Yep, that's how quick it's just become too. At this point, that was just, players and teams were just kind of like, a lot of the players were probably not thinking about like, oh, this is a style of play, but more like if you don't have time to take more than 2 touches. But I want to
see somebody dribble through the whole team.
Yeah, of course.
Watching Messi highlights or Zinedine Zidane just swallowing through like effortlessly. Thierry Henry. So it's like it doesn't happen as often anymore because of how cohesive and tight units move together.
Yeah.
It still happens, and like sometimes you need to like spark and try and be aggressive with your dribbling. But
I think it almost seems like football right now is developing to a point where managers or coaches have to have a game plan to create enough space for those players to have enough time to shine and break through like we like to see.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's something we'll see eventually. It's just it's interesting to think about how that could change.
So on to the Bundesliga. An exhilarating debut campaign that soon disabused cynics of the idea that FSV were set to party all the way to certain relegation. 5 wins and 3 draws in the first 10 games proved that the cash-strapped novices could prevail in the big time. So as we were saying, it kind of alluded that the way that it's slow is it's fertile ground for Klopp's way of playing to have some success. When Mainz is just looked at as a joke and the worst team to get promoted ever. But here we are, having some success. And describing more of how Mainz is playing and how anybody else like Ralph Ragnick and the innovators are playing. The opponent having the ball is our build-up for scoring a goal. We want to win back the ball so quickly that we'll only need one pass to get in front of goal. And I remember Klopp's early days at Liverpool when the press started getting mastered and people, it was literally just winning the ball, like just torching Norwich every single time. Like Liverpool was just having a field day, just Bobby Firmino like winning the ball and just one pass through and it's where we go, another goal. We're working, but it didn't look like just gifts. Look like gifts, but they're not. There's a lot of purposeful pressing happening to cause these mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and especially if you're playing even slower back in the day, I imagine I would like to see like some of how it was working. I'd have to do some research.
They
but
probably have some recorded games on FIFA.com somewhere.
But yeah, so Mines is having some success, but it doesn't mean that everything goes according to plan. But and back to the book here, we are the vanguard. This is more of Klopp. We got to keep pushing. It's not just soccer. It's also how are we connecting with the fans. We are the vanguard of the regular guys in the pub. They want us to run and fight. So that's why these fans turn up in droves after successful campaigns, if you're actually judging it as a whole product, but obviously not getting the result you want at the end.
Yeah, even if it's a loss.
But it's like, well, I saw my team go to death every single game. Like, I'm going to turn up and let them know I appreciate that, instead of, I saw you guys give up at the end of the season. I'm mad. I don't know if I want to do this again. I don't want to get heartbroken because you guys give up.
Ain't that the truth?
So it's like, I didn't, watching Liverpool lose to Real Madrid in the Champions League final, I never felt that like we weren't there to give everything, and our keeper got elbowed in the head and Salah got hurt after his most like productive season he ever had, so he didn't get to play most of the game, and Gareth Bale gets subbed on and just bikes it in, and I learned it from the Juve fans. I remember, I think I was at Tellus for that game, and I just stood up and clapped for the goal, because that's what they did when Ronaldo scored on Juventus. He was still playing for Real Madrid, and he had a famous bicycle against them, and the Juve fans just clapped for him. And I was like, there's nothing we could, I just clapped. I'm like, it's over. And it's not that we weren't trying. It's just, when that happens, it's not your day. It wasn't our day.
No, it's just out of respect. I have this whole paragraph underlined. That's because I just think it's
it, brother.
A huge, important bit. Right after you said they want us to run and fight, our entry ticket is well defined, week after week. Passion, willingness to run, will. If one guy leaves the stadium thinking they should have run and fought more today, we got it wrong completely. I love this game because it's about power, not like, not the kind of power that's like, I need all the power in the world.
Right.
But like,
it's
because,
not Sith.
Yeah. Because it stirs up the dust. You can only get in touch with the game's emotionality. I can't say that good. Via pace and action. A win alone is never emotional. A good game makes the hairs at the back of your neck stand up until Monday or Tuesday. Football is theater. If we don't put on a superb performance, only two guys will be sitting there at the end, which is, pretty much what you summed up. But just the words put into that paragraph are really strong.
No, for sure. I definitely feel it when you were reading it. And I have so we're reading this whole page. So what kind of things goes into getting these performances that get the hairs on the back of your heads to stand up? How do you get this cohesive team? Obviously the drilling and the shifting drills at practice, and Klopp sitting up on his hill and all these things. But you go into, this is a little bit of the team bonding. Mine's elevated levels of coherence on the pitch were underwritten by a special bond off it. Klopp explains. 2 years earlier, he had taken his team to the remote Black Forest hut, where they had to cook and clean for themselves. Ahead of their first Bundesliga season, an extremely unpleasant survival trip to Sweden had yielded 4 days of almost non-stop rain, plenty of mosquito bites, and near mutiny by the squad. They wanted to charter a helicopter to get us out of there, but also a newfound closeness as a result of the shared experience. 5 miles up, 5 miles down.
Mm-hmm.
Klopp asked the players to write a letter to themselves in the glow of the campfire, detailing their impressions and feelings about the journey to the heart of the Scandinavian wilderness. The letters were put in envelopes and collected by Klopp, who told his men that they would be kept to be revisited in case the team experienced a crisis in the months ahead. Each of them could then read what he had written down at the time, sitting around the fire with his teammates, and remember those special and invigorating emotions.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bits, just with like what he does with the letters that they write to themselves. Mm-hmm. For me, like if I got a letter that I wrote to myself in a very like tense situation,
yeah,
it would be very much like, oh man, that wasn't so bad. Like why are you upset?
Right.
But maybe it only feels like that because you got through it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see now, like in hindsight, like that was well worth like the closeness and the experience that you get with your teammates, because you're going to be doing a lot of like you're going to be dealing with hard situations with each other in the future. So it's like a good experiment, if you will, like team bonding experience that Klopp simply came up with. Like mm-hmm. It's nothing like,
yeah,
it's not rocket science. Like it's not a huge equation that he learned about in school. It's just like, you know, you guys are going to write a letter and you're going to read it a little later on and see what you think. And, you know, maybe he wasn't even going to let them see the letter. Maybe he just was like, here, you know, you guys should write out what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then just later on, just like, hey guys, just guess what I got for you.
Hey, we're about to be relegated. You should remember remember what you said. It just goes on talking about kind of their transfer policy of if you're not all in on the city, if you're not all in on the way we play, just don't bother.
Mm-hmm.
But the players that were in, they go on to say here, the players we hooked, we got. We knocked them out. Once they signed, Kloppo and I high-fived each other. It was clockwork.
Yeah. It's cool that they have a system like that.
You will hardly find a player who didn't enjoy playing for us. We never had to penalize people for indiscretions. It wasn't necessary, which is crazy because I wrote in the little space I had, where are the cops? Because we are going back to when Klopp's on the team council or whatever, and just the police are being called. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you feel like this is not it was not pretty before, but it has totally been turned around. The house is clean. There's a culture that is being established here. So instead of having frequent visits of people who just go drunk driving or whatever the case, like those things aren't happening anymore.
Just like with like your comment about like where are the cops, it's also just kind of like a little cultural thing. At least I got from when I was living there for a year. Just kind of, you only really want to call the police when it's like really out of hand.
Oh, I only meant like where are the cops now because like they don't need to be called now.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like before, like wait, what? Klopp's not even the coach, and like the cops are having to be called on, like into the dressing room, and people are like the players are drunk driving around, and this isn't happening anymore. Like they don't need to do anything. We're not even penalizing people. Everybody's all in on what's happening.
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's the whole place has been cleaned up by Klopp. That's what I mean. Like he's more than just a manager. He's not just coaching soccer. And there's a little highlight of everybody has like a late fee. Like people are still getting fined and things like that. And Klopp has a higher tally if he's late. So if he's late, he also gets fined.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that little bit between him and Turk. Just how like he showed up to his place and was like, "You got 2 minutes to get ready, or else we're both gonna be paying a fine."
He was banging on his door like this dude was making Klopp late.
Yeah, but they made it by 2 seconds, which they eventually say. But like the fact that it was just cool to me that like Klopp went out of his way to be like, well, if I'm late, I also have to pay a fine.
Right. So even if it wasn't his fault.
Right.
He was going to pay it.
I'm making somebody else accountable for my fine that I'm going to have to pay his.
And he didn't want to pay it because he hadn't
Right.
He does eventually come into money, but at that time it still is I don't want to pay 500 euros right now.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's what, 500 euros is the fine?
Yeah, for
that's
him.
A good chunk.
Yeah. So at his time, he had more than just the culture of the team in his head. He's I don't want to pay.
Yeah.
On to playing. Mainz won plenty of plaudits for courageous showing in the 4-2 defeat against Felix Magath's Bayern at the Olympic Stadium at the end of November. But darkness was closing in on 170. 7 more defeats and 1 goalless draw against Rapolder's Bielefeld left them in 15th place, 4 points ahead of the relegation zone. There were no more insightful interviews in highbrow publications with the manager, but questions about his job security. The Mainz board, however, made it clear that Klopp would stay on as manager even in the case of relegation. The questions receded again. Getting rid of him was never discussed, says Strutz. We were convinced of him as the coach and a human being. So it's not going well, but there's solid structure and a foundation at the club that we're believing this even if we go down. The players never started doubting themselves. That was his real achievement as a coach. A tactical tweak. Mine started playing. Before I even read that, that's all you. I mean, that's all I would want as a coach. If it's going bad and you've built something now that the players won't doubt themselves anymore, no matter what's happening. I mean, it helps, if you just look at the culmination of work of, we went through all this heartbreak together and we've seen the success now. So now it's proven. They know that there's light at the end of the tunnel no matter what's happening. So that helps. But, that just goes to show you can build that. You can make it. You can weather the storms.
Yeah, and just to kind of link something else to that, because it relates so well on the previous page at the bottom, just Klopp is explaining his leniency with how he treats his players. He says, I want people around me to do well. Mm-hmm. That's what life is about.
Yeah.
Okay, we play football, but there's rough language and sometimes more. But I don't have to step on people's toes.
Yeah.
I don't have to threaten punishment to get them to perform. I have to show players targets in a way that they automatically want to achieve them.
Yeah.
That's what I believe in.
Yeah, that was a little bit of the work-life balance that he was willing to give. People off to go to their mother's birthday,
right,
which could be controversial. You're coming out of, when we started the book, it's, I have to play to survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fully there yet, but even then, Klopp is learning from all these things. It's I need people to love their lives.
Human beings, and they have other stuff going on, and I mean, which is why I kind of always sympathize with just recently, Phil Foden went to go see his first child being born in the Euros, and I'm just man, that's cool. He didn't want to miss that.
Right.
Obviously, he's well off already, but just the fact that Southgate maybe even just let him go do that was a pretty cool coaching moment, which is why maybe he is where he is.
But then it's just if it's Norbert Klopp, you're probably not allowed to go home. But now a different generation of seeing things above you, I want people to fight on the pitch, but they probably will fight harder if I'm letting them live their lives, and it's not just all we do. I want, you said, I want them to be successful as people. Was a big part of it. So they do a tactical tweak here. Mine starts playing a 4-3-2-1 instead of their 4-3-3. Also help them find their feet again. Wins against Freiburg 5-0, Schalke 2-1, Hanover 2-0, and Bochum 6-2 erased fears of the drop. After matchday 32, a 4-2 home defeat by champions Bayern, they were mathematically safe. Both teams celebrated together with the fans, swilling big jugs of beer on the pitch. Mainz finished their first ever Bundesliga season in 11th place. And I just wrote beautiful because Bayern, they won the Bundesliga and Mainz survived.
Yeah.
And they just
both wanted to
both
celebrate.
are just partying.
Yeah.
Because I just thought that was really cool. Just like people who are normally just probably bitterly like at war with each other. Just, hey, we're celebrating as hard as you're getting a trophy.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing to be able to do. I mean, even I've heard stories about like people playing in like the Philly leagues, like adult leagues, and just kind of how like after games, like if a team from Lancaster had to go travel to like right outside of Philly and like Hoefelhohman or something, you know, both teams would go out after the game and drink together.
Right.
And like that doesn't have to solely exist in other places just because like football culture is stronger there. Like this stuff kind of happens with like the sport in other places, and it's really cool when you hear about that stuff because people, even if like you collided shoulders or headbutted somebody during that game, it's just like, I got your next beer, guy. And all of a sudden it's just like, you know, we're just playing the same sport again. And I think that was really cool.
I have a note here of this part this is how I felt as a Liverpool fan, but this is after Klopp's. Once his roots have grown deep in the club, this is how you feel. Staying up in 2004 was a football fairy tale, says Quast. People in Mainz had almost become used to miracles. The extraordinary had become routine. So, I mean, I eventually became very spoiled. So when we don't have 90 points in a season, it's like, what's happening? It's like, why didn't we come back from 3-0 down? Just became used to seeing really incredible things happening. So in the upcoming new season, though, for a bit of luck comes to Mainz way, and they became one of 2 European teams allowed into the UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League, by way of fair play ranking. Their role as the league's nicest, most fun-loving club. So I don't really know the behind the scenes of like why random teams got invited in, but now you survived your first Bundesliga season. You're not at the level of being invited to Europe yet, but now you're there. So now this is Jürgen Klopp's first season of, all right, I got to focus on survival and balance a European schedule. That's wild. Remember, this is this dude's first job. Obviously, he's seasons in now, but this is still his first coaching job. Yeah, and
it goes into why he's able to do so well, just with like with the paragraph saying like Klopp's ability to sell himself, his football and his club to others, even at times of struggle, distinguish him from Wolfgang Frank. Frank didn't have the talent. He lost his nerve after every defeat, bemoaning Mainz not doing better and the stadium being empty. Klopp learned from that. He knew how to talk to people. Do you say to them, you're all idiots because you don't understand how great our football is? Or do you say, this is a full throttle event? Everyone who doesn't come to experience that will miss out. You'd better come. He's got a talent for being positive, and you will have heard that before. He captures people. There aren't many people in Germany who can do that. You can get people behind you, behind your idea, though. Politics is no different to coaching. He's a born politician.
Should run for president of Germany.
That thought hasn't even crossed my mind, man. It's just like he would have the whole country behind him, I'm sure.
Just a normal guy.
Right. That's what anybody wants in a leading position, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But you mustn't drive people into the fire. You can only do that once, then they're gone. You have to lead them in and out of the battle again, alive.
Mm-hmm.
You have to deliver them. Then they will follow you. That was pretty powerful description of how Klopp probably intends to coach, but even with the first season or first year with Mainz, like, you know, he's leading them into a fire, and he doesn't. I don't think he really knows if they're gonna come out alive.
Yeah, probably
But
not.
It's admirable that he still works so hard to, even without having zero guarantees of promotion or whatever, just like the amount of investment that he puts in to make sure things can be as best as they can for the best possible outcome is just, it's what fuels what he does, man. It's just crazy.
Well, and he leads them into Europe, and they have two wins and a loss in their first in their group, I imagine. But now, like, he's learning how this balance of multiple games, and Mainz loses their first 5 Bundesliga games, and it's said it's their second season syndrome, and the party is over. It doesn't go into full detail on the rest of the European campaign, but they are out. And luckily, and also not luckily, Mainz form recovers after their UEFA Cup exit at the end of September. But the results did not. 10 games into the season, FSV were in the relegation zone with 7 points on the board. A 3-1 defeat away to Hertha BSC was typical of the inexplicable disconnect between splendid attacking football and depressing scorelines. And I remember a time like that in Liverpool where we had all these chances and we weren't winning.
There was a lot of uncertainty. Well, not a lot, maybe just like the uncertainty felt big.
It felt big, but it's like, you know, if you're playing that way, it's hard to like figure out what to change if the chances are there and they're just not going in. To keep presenting themselves in such a way that even the most critical observers can't help but notice that these men enjoy playing football. I think even if the results are there, I just love that line. That's how we're going to carry ourselves. This is how we're going to play. And you can critique us to the end, but you will never not believe that we love what we do.
I thought that was great too.
Every 3 or 4 weeks, whenever Mainz Bundesliga schedule allowed it, this is me. I related to Klopp probably most in this. This has nothing to do with the Bundesliga season. Klopp would play somewhere in the countryside between vineyards and fields of turnips against men with huge beer bellies and incredibly bad players who are all world champions of the third half. As Martin Quast recalls, Kloppo was at his happiest here among those guys. I just want to play. He stood on the pitch and kneeled over laughing when some bloke tried to shoot on goal and hit the corner flag instead. Afterwards, everybody huddled around Kloppo in the tent or in the pub, and he didn't stop laughing all night. That barking laugh of his, all you saw were his big teeth, completely random people working at the bank or at Blendax, the toothpaste factory, went home saying, "Eric Klopp, we knew you as a coach, but we had no idea you're such a cool guy." I just wanted to highlight that because even though this dude's like at the top, like it's not going so well in this season specifically, but dude, you're a successful coach in Germany. What you've built is amazing. I know you're having a great time, but when he's just playing some soccer, man, that's when he's at his happiest. And I would know, I just relate to that because that's when I feel like my full expression as a person is like when I'm playing. Like, I just love it. I love it to death. So when I'm just getting to play, I would take that over coaching, even though I loved coaching. I just want to play.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I try and play. That's why I try and never stop playing.
Right.
Just the relationship I have with the sport includes me playing. And there will be a time where I won't be able to do that anymore. And it's just like, all right, like, I just gotta, it doesn't have to be all the time, but playing, just make sure I'm doing it, because it helps me, like, just like it says at the bottom, the last sentence of this paragraph, it says, because Klopp never pretended to be someone he wasn't.
Right.
And just like playing the sport really helps me be the better version of myself, which is maybe another way of saying, like, it helps me not pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And like that, I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that also stays in coaching the sport. So like I kind of can always have that to kind of balance me out. But,
right.
It's so much of this stuff, like, you and I are able to just relate with and just really have an emotional connection with, is really special, and what makes this book for me.
I think if Klopp was with us at the beer hall the other day, we'd have a good time.
Oh my god, that would be so much fun.
Probably would have the same testimony to share. I'm like, he's just a cool guy. He's just a normal guy.
He's the normal one.
But back to the campaign. As the days drew shorter, Mainz 05's strong attacking department, playmaker De Silva, striker Michael Thurk, Benny Arour, Peter Ruhmann, and Mohamed Zidane started to turn a heap of goal-scoring opportunities into tangible success, so the goals are coming in now. By Christmas, Mainz had amassed 16 points. The positive momentum could not be overlooked. Klopp was offered a 2-year contract extension until 2008, and he accepted. Christian Heidel didn't deny reports the coach's salary had been raised to $1.2 million, which would have put him not far off the Bundesliga elite at the time. Which I'm not going to go into that because it's later where it really breaks down like why he's getting paid the money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, never mind. That's happening right now. It's the Kloppo effect. He helped win us sponsors and sell tickets. The club were beginning to think big, far beyond the next game and the immediate need to stave off relegation for a second time. They conducted a feasibility study into building a new stadium. And after 15 years on the job, Heidel finally went full-time as the club's general manager. We have a chance here to create an infrastructure that we wouldn't have dreamt about a couple years ago. Klopp said, I want to be part of that challenge. When I leave, I want the club to have benefited from me. That was always the plan. I want to leave a mark. And I just wrote on the side, like, Wolfgang Frank to now. All the things that Wolfgang Frank was kind of like disappointed that Mainz didn't have. Now they're working to do those things. Let's get a new stadium built. Let's have a youth system. Let's do all these things. And Klopp wants to leave that impact, and he is. Like, he's the one getting the sponsors and tickets in, which is normally like somebody, you're going to get somebody to do that job for you. But he's having that impact. He's more than just a manager. And now they're going to negotiate Klopp's contract here. Negotiations with Kloppo lasted 2 minutes. I gave him a piece of paper with a number. He was allowed to put the year next to it. I thought that was so cool. It's just, Here you go. How long do you want to stay? And then there's just a shake of hands and a story. We never negotiated. He always agreed to my proposal. Like, that's the amount of stress that, like, you just at least hear in the news of, like, teams, contracts. Like, negotiation of contracts and players not showing up to training camp, or this manager wants this or that. And he's just, boom, 2 minutes, we're done. Let's move on. Let's focus on the soccer.
Yeah, that just goes to show what Klopp's relationship with, him and the entire club is, what it pretty much is. It's just, he loves coaching there. They love having him being the coach. And that's, there's a lot of details I could go into that, but like, that's the big picture of how easy that negotiation is for them. And
I remember, I think it was the Liverpool ownership that was describing him as like, this guy, if he wasn't coaching soccer, like, he has all the attributes to be a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
Or as we maybe just alluded, you could be a politician or a president.
Yeah.
He's so much more than just the coach.
Well, yeah, that just goes into my theory of what he'll do not as he's not coaching anymore at the moment. Like, he could easily just go to Mines and be like, all right, guys, I'm ready to be the CEO.
Dude, I was going to bring this up at near the end of where I just reading this chapter, I'm like, he's gonna go back to Mines, dude. This is where it all started. Like, he's gonna go back here, whether to be coach or
it would be so heartwarming.
I'll do everything. That would be really cool. Sometimes people called to lure him away, and he would laugh his head off because no one realized how much we were paying him. 7 figures. There were many Bundesliga coaches who didn't take that, and Klopp would try to say it's too much, but they said you're worth it. And the fact that's my note again, that Klopp is more than a coach. He does multiple jobs as being the manager. And back to playing, the team's obvious top heaviness, meanwhile, necessitated a tactical rethink. Mainz's best players were all in attack. So a new 4-4-2 system with a diamond in the midfield and Thurk behind 2 strikers was put into place to bring their qualities to bear. Away at Dortmund in February, the new formation seemed to leave the midfield far too exposed. The coaching staff were mulling over abandoning the experiment at halftime. This is where we talked it's a balance, like coaching with Kyle, and 10 minutes into the game he looks at you like, do we need to change it? Sometimes yes. Sometimes you need to let it play out. It's really, I don't know the variables that it depends on how closely you're watching, and I've been right on it and I've been wrong on that call. The coaching staff were mulling over abandoning the experiment at halftime, with Mainz 1-0 down and not in the game at all. But they stuck to it. Somehow things fell into place. Thurk scored and the visitors were in the end unlucky not to take all 3 points. That was a very tough moment, Klopp later said, one of many valuable lessons for us. 7 points from the next 3 games lifted them clear of the relegation places. And recognition for Klopp's good work also arrived in another shape. Center back Manuel Freindrich was called up by Jürgen Klinsmann, the first ever Mainz player in the national team, if you want to say what
it's a national Mannschaft.
Mano is a class defender and a super lad. I'm happy for Jürgen Klinsmann that he'll be able to get to know him, Klopp quipped, beaming with pride. And then Mainz only lost 1 match in 7, 3-0 away to Nuremberg in their modified shape. Nevertheless, results elsewhere conspired against them, ahead of the home game against league leaders FC Bayern Munich on match day 31. So it's going well, but they had a bad start, so it's not that they're out of the woods just yet.
No, they make good progress. Like you said, not right away.
And I'm going to skip over some off-the-pitch things that they did, just in the sense of you got to read it for yourself. But back to the pitch, Mainz drew 2-2 with Bayern. It would be a disaster if Mainz were to go down. Bayern general manager
Uli Hoeneß.
Uli. I like that. If that's how you say it, I like that. Said after an evenly contested 90 minutes, a nervy 3-0 win away at Wolfsburg put the club into a very promising position. And on the penultimate match day, it was a carnival time at the Brunswick once more. Mainz beat Schalke 1-0. They were safe. A tearful, beer-drained Klopp mounted the stadium fence to sing punch-drunk songs with the fans. He's an ultra among the Bundesliga coaches.
For sure.
So they were able to survive again. You know, all the little tactical changes and meetings and all the work that they put into making a cohesive team, and you know, it all worked. And you know, Mainz is at that kind of in a similar state of like, we just want to survive, but it's a whole different kind of project surviving in the Bundesliga. But staying alive in the Bundesliga continues it brings a whole lot more further success than just surviving in a lower league, because you're getting more money to come in and all these other things.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives the players like a new sense of like perspective on playing Bundesliga games. Like it says on 179, being able to play in the Bundesliga again next year is the greatest thing for us. Mm-hmm. We will still experience each game as a present, like a kid with wide eyes. And that was pretty cool, just because like after so much struggling, you're able to kind of, these players are allowed to appreciate just being where they are. And really just be able to play each game with a sense of just gratefulness, maybe. I thought that was I don't know, pretty special for the players that got themselves there, along with just trusting in Klopp.
So, drama. In the summer, the floodgates opened. In addition to De Silva and Zidane, striker Benny Oyer and the defender Matthias Abel also left. There was a bunch of talent having to go. But there's a lot of belief in it, because there was... Now when you tell Heidel, like, oh, all this is going to happen and you guys might get relegated, he goes, we've been hearing all that for 15 years now, he said dismissively. So now there's like a belief, like, oh, this is bad, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But they've lost a lot of talent. Most damaging in more ways than one was the departure of the fifth regular, Michael Thurk. Skipping down a bit, Thurk's brace on the final day of the 03 season against Eintracht Trier had lifted Mainz to the Bundesliga. So it's a very storied person at the club. Kind of, you know, you losing somebody who was there at the times you needed them to score. It's always hard to lose those players. You can hate Suarez all you want. I understand it. There's not really a whole lot to like if you weren't a fan of him at your own club, but, you know, it sucked when he left, when, you know, Gerrard retired, or Fernando Torres leaving, just all those things, like, or just cult heroes like Origi leaving, you know, or Shaqiri, you know, they didn't do a whole lot, but they were like key moments that they were there. Wijnaldum leaving sucked, like, but you gotta keep going. Heidel had promised the forward that he'd be welcome to return if his transfer to Cottbus didn't work out. When it didn't, Thurk paid part of his transfer fee to facilitate his return in January of 2005. I thought this was heading to not a drama-filled thing, because they're like, you're welcome back, and he even paid to come back.
No, yeah, it gets kind of sticky, and I wasn't really expecting it either, because he was such a renowned player for this team for a while.
But in 2006, Thurk learned of interest from Eintracht Frankfurt. The move to his hometown was hugely attractive to him. And he facilitated a falling out with Klopp and Heidel. He professed himself disappointed that the Mainz general manager had not informed him of Eintracht's inquiries, then attacked Klopp for not backing him enough in relation to a possible call-up by the national team. I have to think about that, the Mainz coach had truthfully answered when someone asked him about Thurk's prospects with Klinsmann. You know, I can see if... It's kind of just probably he wanted to leave, but I understand how that would make it sound like you weren't backing him up. But I think to Klopp's detriment there, I'm not blaming him, that he answers honestly. So it's like...
Well, yeah, because it probably feels like he needs him.
He probably needs him, but also, like, should he be in the national team? And it's also, probably Klopp has just an analytical brain. I could be wrong, but I'm just getting the sense of, like, for him, he's like, so who's at the national team right now? How do they play? How does he fit in? Is he the right striker to fit the system? Yeah. And all these kinds of things. Like,
Turk really had an emotional reaction and just...
Because I'm sure Klopp was involved in turning down plenty of great talent at their club, because you don't play the way we want to play. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that Thurk only really has success when he's under Klopp. Yeah. The 33-year-old went further, much further. Klopp, Thurk said, was some kind of super guru, though, whose man management prowess was vastly overrated. This constant cheerfulness, always a funny quip. The stuff he says in the team meetings, his way of motivating, I switch off because I've heard it 1,000 times before. I was worn thin. Many of the things he says, I can't hear anymore. So that's kind of the nail in the coffin for him, and, you know, he gets the switch that he wants. The stuff Thurk said was unforgivable. It was scorched earth stuff. But it goes a little bit in the future, though. Just it doesn't end well then, but in 2015, Augsburg, who is where Thurk had found himself back then, afterwards, was playing Liverpool. And who was there, sitting in the VIP box next to Ulla? Michael Thurk. Klopp had invited him as a guest of honor. And I respect people who can just let bygones be bygones. So I thought that was cool that, you know, Klopp seems like a kind of guy who's able to just kind of let things go.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of, all that's kind of just a side note and just a little more into Klopp's character, and that drama still happens. It's not like it's always perfect all the time.
Yeah.
So, but we're on to the 2006 season after they were safe again. And it was a good start. Raphael Benitez's Liverpool were demolished 5-0 in a friendly at the Bruchweg. Mainz beat VfL Bochum 2-1 in the first Bundesliga game of the season. But that was it. As far as wins were concerned, the newly built team couldn't make the demanding system work. 8 draws and 8 defeats left them propping up the table at the halfway mark.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, rumors are starting to swirl of what Thurk had said, that, like, Klopp's losing the dressing room and he's not able to motivate people anymore. And it doesn't get any better because Klopp has, like, a great speech at a press conference. We won't go to Schalke feeling small with our backs bowed or broken. Whoever stays the course, never gives up, never stops working, will be rewarded at the end. That's my fundamental belief. We will keep on fighting until someone tells us you can stop now, the season's over. Man, it's cool. Mine's lost the game 4-0. Dang. It's like, come on. I was reading that just going like, yeah, Klopp, tell him. Yeah.
And then they didn't believe him, I guess.
Yep. And then the next match before the winter break at Bayern, same scoreline, 4-0. It's not looking good. So there would have to be some changes during the holidays, but not on the bench. Heidel declared Klopp unsackable. We would jump for joy if he extended his contract beyond 2008 with us, he told the press. So they're still, it's like, dude, I don't care. Klopp is staying, and everything else, the problems will be solved elsewhere. So they're not believing this whole he doesn't have the dressing room anymore. It's easy to see it if you get to see behind the scenes.
Yeah, and just how Klopp's able to bring, or the club is able to bring in new blood to the team to get a little bit back on track with the Danish midfielder Leon Andresen, who they signed from Werder Bremen on a 6-month loan as a center. He had mentioned like how what it was like to play in his short time there, and just how he had said, my teammates fight as if the opponents are threatening to take away their children. And that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And somebody else had hailed them as the brave hearts of the Bundesliga, with no Scottish affiliation. But, you know, even with that being said, like, things are still kind of like struggling to materialize results wise, because then they end up losing to Gladbach later on, like a 3-0. And then they eventually lost the Bayern 7-0 away.
No, they would have to beat them.
Oh, they would have to. Oh,
That's
sorry.
how the results accumulate that to not get relegated. They would have to beat Bayern Munich 7-0 away.
Oh, yeah, because it even says, like, this kind of result you can't even get on it, like, playing the game on a PlayStation, let alone in the Allianz Arena. Like, just, yeah. It seems unrealistic for them to be able to get the results that they need at the timeline of the season that they're at, which is a shame because like it's hard to fight against that feeling of like, okay, like it's starting to feel like time for things to change a little bit, even if you do get new players.
Well, there was a whole bunch of. It looked like the way it was reading that it was going to work. They signed all these players. They bring back Mohamed Zidane, and they're having a bit of success. The supporters even got to move on. They started a campaign called Mission Possible 15 to save Mainz from relegation. They promised themselves to make the stadium like a powerhouse. We're not going to just complain, and the singing was they weren't celebrating like the tackles as much anymore, and just being noisy is good, but they won 5 of their 6 games at the restart, and they were 10th, but it didn't go well, and refereeing mistakes, injuries, goal scoring opportunities, wasted, silly goals conceded, the familiarity of relegation sides since time eternal. All of it true. All of it was to blame to an extent for Mainz losing 7 of the following 9 games, which leads on to where you were at, to the Gladbach loss. It came all too late. Mainz would have to beat FC Bayern 7-0 away to have a shot of staying up. There was no realistic prospect of achieving such a result on a PlayStation, let alone the Allianz Arena. The Bundesliga adventure was over. FSV were going down after 102 games at the top. I have right below the center back, Subotic. It was a relegation in his first season as a professional football player, but surprisingly not that painful. The mood in the dressing room was good until the very end, he says. We stayed a team. We stayed together. That was a very important experience for me. It helped me to grow as a player. It didn't get significantly worse or louder towards the end. Maybe a little, but not so much. And the Braunschweig certainly didn't lose its voice. Standing ovations accompanied by a lap of honor after the final whistle at the Gladbach game. We want to see our team, chants forced the squad to come out of the dressing room for a second round. They sang, "You'll never walk alone again." And
I forget that they sing that song too.
I just thought that was really beautiful because also for me, I say it to people around me all the time when it comes to playing, I can lose 7-0 every single game if I'm playing for a team that's like how Subotic is describing it, like we stayed a team, we stayed together. The mood in the dressing room was good. Like if we're staying positive and we're fighting for each other, it's so much better when you're winning, of course. But I don't mull over the losses very long if that's the environment that I'm playing. It's a whole lot more harder to keep it up when it's not the environment that you're playing in and the results are bad. Because even I can play in a game and win and it not be that good for my soul. And then also just a touch of everything Klopp has been doing is that the fans did come together and your team is getting relegated. Like this has been the dream and you're getting relegated out of the dream and they're calling the team out of the dressing room. Because we want to see the team. We want to lift them up and we sing "You'll Never Walk Alone Again." Like
the culture has been established.
My handkerchiefs are wet, German FA president Dr. Theo Schweinsteiger admitted. Football can't achieve more than it has here with us, Struth said about the emotional farewell. Klopp took the microphone once again. A cartoon figure provided the impulse for his speech. Paraphrasing the end credits of the German version, of the animated Pink Panther show. He promised that this is not the end of all days. We'll be back, without a doubt. Like the Pink philosopher said, Klopp almost sounded happy about the relegation, for bringing out the true football soul in minds. The drop down wasn't treated as a catastrophe, but accepted as rather an inevitable setback. All that has happened is what everybody had always expected. The broadsheet wrote, Klopp, it's amazing to see how people deal with relegation. That's what life is about. If you've given it your all and have failed, you can deal with the situation. Doesn't that sound similar to what he said before the Barcelona comeback? If we go out and fail, like, we're going to do it in the most exciting way.
Yeah,
if you've given it your all and failed, you can deal with the situation. That's just what we're gonna go. We're gonna go out and we're gonna try. People and the club have reacted in a classy manner. Here, players will never be idiots for losing a game. In Munich, FSV players and officials wore red top hats before kickoff and held up a banner in front of their traveling supporters. We take our hats off to you, it read. Klopp confessed to a spell of introspection. I questioned myself. If I had found I was 90% responsible for relegation, I would have had to draw the necessary conclusions. That's not the case, but pledged his allegiance. I don't have the right to stop now. I want to make sure I can live in mines after I retire or get fired somewhere without there being any open questions. He accepted that some players wanted to leave for the other Bundesliga clubs. He added, but the situation was different for him. I'm nearly 40. I can do my job for a few more years. I'm not running out of time. Players have less time. They have to do these things. For me, it's about living up to my responsibility. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
And that is The Fire on the Rhine.
That is chapter 10.
That is chapter 10. And there's some pictures, which I think is the only chapter to have a bunch of pictures from Klopp Young to Klopp at Dortmund to Klopp at Mainz.
It's kind of pictures that depict the timeline of the book here, or his career. Yeah, that whole last paragraph definitely moves me emotionally, just especially as a coach. Just, you know, you're asking these players to do a lot in the name of just, as professionals, you know, you want them to earn what they're being paid, but you also want them to earn like the respect of the fans and being able to get results and, you know, making a goal and set out to get it, and helping a group of people do that in unison is not always very easy. But he does figure out how to do it very well, even if he doesn't think sometimes that he even if he seems unsure. I mean, this book really kind of helps see Klopp on his human side a bit more, just with like having his own self-doubts about himself and other things, but you really are able to relate to him in a human way, which is cool. And just this paragraph just it hits home with even just like, I don't know, this book is available for a lot of people to read, and you know, they're able to relate a coach to coach, but a human to human like base. And it's pretty powerful and just definitely inspiring to figure out what kind of coach or person we are, and really kind of stem that thought process in your own way, and just figure out what it all means for you. But yeah, this chapter is definitely by far like my favorite, because I think it has a lot of magic to it, just with how special like the Mainz journey really was for him, in it being his first job or like professional soccer coach in the second league, which he even didn't think he belonged in. Right. And it's cool to see him deal with the ups and downs, but just really be able to figure out what the players needed and to do with what he had. I mean, Mainz was no Bundesliga giant, so a lot of it we retouch on just how, like, you know, the stadium's falling apart and they barely have any money, and people are working for free, just like how much it means to that community to get to keep this thing going, even if it's like you know, stumbling to get there.
Yeah, it just shows the incredible perseverance and way of looking at life. I mean, that's why it's easy for me to like equate life to soccer or instances like this, and trying to describe to somebody who may be at like a low point in life and can't see what tomorrow looks like. But, you know, if you can relate to the stories, then it'll have an impact if you're a soccer-minded person, in the sense of 2 seasons that were branded failures only through the way of having that outlook of life. Was it not able to be, the impact of a failure didn't happen because of their outlook of going like, well, look at what we did, and having support around you and people to lift you up. Then to do it again and to fail in the same exact way. Mm-hmm. And then to go at it again and then actually have the success, to actually start living the dream. And for a chapter to end with technically failure, but for it to not feel that way at all.
Yeah.
Because of the way that they go about living life and the way that they go at it every single day, and creating a culture of cohesiveness together, not just as players, but as people. And that we're going to face everything together, and no matter how dark it is, like when it comes to us facing it together, like we face it with belief and positivity, and we're not going to let what people are trying to spin lies about what's going on behind the scenes, or like all the things that come against them, even when results don't look good on the outside. What's happening behind the scenes is something truly special, which is why even when the results don't come, it doesn't feel like a loss.
What's left behind.
And everything that happens to them just stacks up and makes them stronger, and their culture is stronger, then their belief grows stronger. Yeah. And it all stems from a guy who's willing to build that and believe in that, and had no, at least not showing that he had doubts in how he believed it needed to be done, and knowing that if we just push through this, kind of even in an idealist naivete kind of way, kind of fairy tale-ish in a way of how we were just having a discussion kind of even about like, you know, like the stereotypical like movie or anime of just like, oh, if we just believe in each other, like we'll have success. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, it's a very idealistic thing to say, but there is a truth in that. But the truth of making that happen is a day in, day out for years on end of putting in the effort and putting in the belief that if we do this together, we can overcome. Mm-hmm. But it's not just on the day we believe it. Yeah, it can help on the day, but the things that he's building and the success they have, that comes from doing it every single day, actually making the connections, doing the very hard and painful work, and finding the joy in the suffering.
Yeah, it's and just having, even at the end of that season, with like with it looking like a failure, and it wasn't, because they had the reflection to be able to like, look, we worked really hard.
Yeah, for sure,
to last the amount of time that we did. And that should be, we need to show that a bit. We need to give that a bit of respect, because, you know, that didn't come from nothing. It came from everything that happened, and with everybody that was there, and just that reflection. Just, it's so cool, especially from the fans' point. Like, just like the fans help that stay there. And they help the rest of the team feel like, okay, it wasn't like, even though we lost, even if like we're getting relegated back out, just like the fans help that reflection really come to reality, and just like, hey, that wasn't all that bad. Like, we did some pretty awesome things, especially from where the whole thing started.
Yeah.
And, you know, from 300 fans at the train station to 8,000, and then at the games, just like asking the team to come back out and like celebrate the journey. Is just like, oh man, there's so much magic in that, and it's just so cool to me.
Yeah, humility has a way of like breaking the door down to make connections. So if you have a team that maybe you're a little egotistical on the inside, but in the way that they play is pure humility, in the sense of, we run ragged for one another, and we're going to run the whole time and do this pressing, and we're going to make it that when we play, people are going to know that we love this game. And you do that every single game. Like, that's what gains this respect that the fans had for them, and that's why it grew. That's why there was a passionate love for them, and that's why even when they fell, they were there to not like demand people's jobs, but just to celebrate and be thankful. So even the fans had humility, instead of sometimes like not disparaging what Real Madrid has created, because it's the most successful club ever. But there's a little more of like an elitism there, which keeps it the way it is. Like, I'm not trying to, like I said, not disparaging it, but you start not playing well, and it's a whole lot of, all right, you're out. You know,
Yep.
But it's a different Titan that's been made. And if you get to the top, keeping that standard that high, I can understand how that can help. But to me, then there's probably a little more bitterness. I don't want to be calling for the head of the coach. You know, I want to have joy in all things. So I'll take the mind's approach, for me personally, every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's even as a Chelsea fan right now, like, maybe even as a United fan, for some other people, maybe start to think about what the culture is for each club now that things aren't working out.
Right.
With both clubs having great success in the past and have won trophies and medals and all of that, and had legends play at the club, each club. It is weird to think about how clubs can come up from just what these two clubs are going through specifically. Just like, how do they, who's going to be creating a culture that's going to like now like last a bit longer in like a good way, so that the fans can reflect and be like, hey, you guys like put a lot of work into that. Like, we really respect what you're doing. So like, we're applauding you. We want to celebrate with you. And hopefully that worked. I mean, you only want that for a football club.
Yeah, man. I was able to have that like come through on Liverpool lost out on the Premier League the one year. I'm going to get the exact year here if I can find it. It was it was the 21-22 season. Man City had 93 points.
Oh, yeah.
29 wins, 6 draws, 3 losses. We had 28 wins, 8 draws, only 2 losses on 92 points.
And how close that actually is.
Right, and it's so... Chelsea was third place, 74.
Yeah.
Like that, there was 2 teams just playing unbelievable football. And that era, like any other... Like I was thankful for that season, and I was happy to not have any bitterness about not winning the Premier League that year. I was like, what do I want from these players? Like, they can't give any more. Like, yeah, you can look at it and be like, oh man, like if we just tied that one game, you know, but it's like they only lost 2 games all year. Like,
it's easy.
It's such a great season.
How hard some of these teams and players work to get those 92 or 94 points in that season. I mean, even some of the players from the national teams in the Euros are, pundits are quoting them on just saying like, oh, like yeah, some of the players just say like how tired everybody was for that tournament, and
because of the crazy stuff they go through before the international stuff. It's unreal,
right? And just the amount of playing that they actually training that they do just for their club team, and how that kind of ties into their performances at another tournament, at the Euros or the World Cup. It's just like, maybe football is coming to a point where, national teams are going to have their own separate squads.
Yeah.
Which to me would make a lot of sense. Maybe those teams would miss out on some big talents, but like, maybe there's enough players to make it seem like we're not missing out on big club talents, or I don't know. It's just it's food for thought, and just how maybe the game might change in the future.
That just gave me the thought, though, of looking at the City Liverpool season that was like so good. I don't know Pep Guardiola's adolescence story, but just a guy who played for Barcelona and like grew up in top football mind, and then coaching Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and just always at the top. And the guy pushing him to the brink, like not needing the 93 points, every one of those points to win that Premier League, is just some guy who made it barely to Bundesliga 2, like playing, and like just some random dude who's the guy who's like pushing Pep to the brink to have to play almost a perfect season just to win, is just this random dude from the Black Forest who just came out of what we just read of the minds of like coaching, where it's like we come out of the showers and there's just mold and we're getting diseases. What he grew up like learning the game was just so vastly different. Just sheer willpower of the guy who's just like, we play the right way and the technical way. And just like, who is this? Get out of here, dude. You don't belong here. But it's like he does. It's just so, they're so like counter, and it's just so crazy that's where this story of where we just read, like it gets to there where he's challenging the Titans for being the best club in the world, like, and Liverpool was at one point, like, arguably on and off, but just like taking that team and being like, obviously there was some iron sharpening iron, I think, of them two being that good and pushing each other, but like for him to get into that slot, that's gonna push having this rivalry at the absolute top of all of world football, of just there wasn't really any two teams playing as good at that time, and that's just insane to me.
And it's only pushing like low to mid-table teams of the same league to do better, and like it's I mean, we're witnessing it as we go with each season, and just how like teams like Newcastle or like Norwich or Crystal Palace are really like, they're always formidable teams, but they're always looking to get better so that they can beat teams like Man City or Liverpool, and teams like United and Chelsea are desperate to get back to their winning ways. Otherwise, like, these other teams are just gonna take those table places they used to have.
Sure.
And just how delicate all of that is, and if you're not performing, like, you'll drop.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. I think that was going for about 2 hours now.
All right, we got a solid episode.
Yeah, man. I just felt like, I don't know, I was like looking for a moment to stop, and it never felt like it came. So we tanked through it all.
Yeah, I just felt the will to just
get this
complete
done.
The whole chapter.
Yeah, man.
We just kept like finding. We were diligent about finding the things we wanted to talk about. Then I just went with that.
But so yeah, if you've listened to the whole thing, you're you're
well done.
Well done. Especially if you've kept listening to after we stopped talking about the book. But for our little viewership that we have, we thank you for listening.
Yeah. Go out and buy the book soon.
Buy the book, and I'm going to try to be more diligent and maybe having a little less notes. It's very difficult for me because it all is good.
Yeah, it all does seem important to say.
It's in terms of just like, this is good stuff about coaching or playing. But this has been Hoefelhohman FC. Leave a like, subscribe. Thank you for listening.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.